Welcome to my interpersonal communication project. My name is Sabrina Mimidis, and this is for class Studies in Interpersonal Communication, HSCR 508, Section D9. What I like best about this project is it's given me a greater self-awareness and understanding, and has given me useful tools for improving my interpersonal communication. As we move to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and being the baby of the family certainly has its perks. I've lived in Pennsylvania most of my life, aside from the years I spent in Oklahoma for college. I earned my bachelor's degree in psychology in 2009, and currently I'm pursuing my master's degree in human services. I've been a follower of Christ for most of my life, which has led me to getting my degree from 2 Christian colleges. I've been sharing my life journey with my husband Ryan, whom I married a little over a year ago. Through all the transitions and changes that have taken place over the past year, and with the material covered in this course, I've gained insight and I've begun identifying goals for my life. As we click to the next slide, I'll explain my goals. The overarching goal I've developed for my life is to continue to grow, mature, and develop intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, and interpersonally. I plan to achieve this goal by continuing my education through devoting myself to prayer and reading scripture, and by applying my self-awareness and personal effort to improving the relationships in my life. On the next slide, I'll talk about enlarging the conversation. One way to improve my interpersonal relationships is by enlarging the conversation. Enlarging the conversation can be defined as identified needs combined with intentional resourcing. Through reading the required text for this course, completing the various assignments, and utilizing the results from the self-assessments, I've been able to identify my own communication needs. My personal background and unique behavioral blend both influence my conversation with others. On the next slide, you'll see many things that have influenced my background. Burley Allen claims one way our communication is influenced in adulthood is the way we are listened to as children, or how we are stroked. I remember receiving compliments from my parents while I was growing up, but I also remember criticism. When I tried to share my feelings, sometimes they were discredited. I also remember a lack of physical affection. All of these have affected my communication today, both positively and negatively. Additionally, my mother was rather introverted when she was raising me, so as an adult I've had to make a great effort to branch out and make friends, since I mimicked her introversion growing up. Finally, as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm the youngest in my family. Regarding the youngest child, Romeo states, if they are too pampered, they can feel weak and develop feelings of inferiority. Such was the case for me. As you click to the following slide, I'll tell you more about my unique behavioral blend. After taking Carbonell's self-assessment, I realized I have a directing, cautious, or DC personality, but I tend to exhibit more of a C personality in Graph 1, or in public environments. According to the DISC model, I am more task-oriented, meaning that my primary focus is on jobs I need to finish, rather than on building relationships. I can be moody sometimes, but I have difficulty relaying my feelings because it's a challenge for me to want to work on my friendships and relationships. I address people with a methodical approach, and I expect them to be self-sufficient. Therefore, I can easily become impatient with others. At times, I'm not very personable. For the communication skills test I took through Discovery Health, my results for my communication showed that my communication is pretty good. My results showed that my communication is pretty good, but that I also have room for improvement. Most of the time, I'm able to get my point across, and I'm most of the time able to understand where others are coming from, but not all the time. Stewart reminds me, communication is where humanness happens. I am learning just how important relationships are. After taking the self-assessments, I'm better able to realize my behavioral blend, my strengths and weaknesses, and I'm able to consciously work on both. Click to the next slide and I'll lay out a few potential barriers to my communication. Burley Allen points out our perception about a person, a situation, or a subject can influence our reception and how much we will pay attention. If we are interested in the speaker, we will be more in tune with what is being said. Perception can be a barrier for me because sometimes I'm judgmental of the talker, and I can lose interest rather quickly. Another barrier for listening are hot buttons. Hot buttons are phrases or topics that elicit strong emotions and cloud one's listening ability. For me personally, this happens when someone uses the word should. I don't want to be told how to do something or have somebody address me with a black and white approach. It frustrates me. A third barrier is the time lag factor. Burley Allen states the average talker speaks about 200 words per minute, but a listener can process information at around 300 to 500 words per minute. I struggle with this one the most because it's hard to be patient to stay with the talker and hear what they're actually trying to say. Finally, filters exist because each of us has unique backgrounds. We all have different upbringings, beliefs, and experiences. We have different meanings for words, and therefore we all see through different filters. On the next slide, I'll talk about a solution to these barriers. The solution I have come up with is mindful listening. Mindful listening encompasses many skills, as Stewart points out in our textbook. These skills include the ability to receive information accurately and interpret in an unbiased manner, to retain information for future use, to pay attention to the speaker, to attend to my own speech and to be aware of my interactions with the talker, and finally to encourage the speaker to speak from the heart without condemning him or her. This makes the speaker feel valued and respected. On the next slide, we'll take a look at another hindrance to the communication process. Internal noise pollution occurs when we have things going on inside of us that distract us from listening. Our internal thoughts and beliefs affect our emotions and behavior, and ultimately how we interact with others. I've identified two sources of internal noise pollution I struggle with. First of all, I deal with negative thoughts. Negative thoughts include phrases like, I can't, I'm not good enough, or I'm incapable. The solution I've come up with to combat negative thinking is to rephrase negative thoughts to make them more empowering. Instead of saying, I can't, I can say, I don't know how, and then seek out additional resources until I find what I need. Secondly, I struggle with anxiety. Anxiety makes me feel unsettled, and it can be very distracting. I can often miss what is being said. A solution that Stewart suggests is not masking anxiety with trying to control it. He states, when you let go of trying to control things, including your anxiety, and feel what you feel in the present, then your anxiety will diminish. Additionally, Latore suggests breathing exercises and guided positive imagery. Latore states visualizations that encourage clients to develop more positive healing images of their issues promote strength and help support insights and behavioral change. Moving to the next slide, we'll discuss external noise pollution. External noise pollution involves all of those things outside of ourselves that distract us from conversations. I've identified two forms of external distraction: time pressure and temperature conditions. For time pressure and meeting deadlines, I've developed the solution of scheduling more time in between my activities. And giving myself more of a margin for error, I will eliminate some of the pressure I've typically created for myself. Regarding the temperature of places, I tend to be cold most of the time, which can be both distracting and uncomfortable. The solution I've created for this problem is to carry a sweater or some other warm article of clothing with me wherever I go. I may not be able to physically change the temperature of places, but I can better prepare for being cold by bringing something warm with me. As we proceed to the next slide, I'll tell you about my plan of action. I've come up with a plan of action for how to achieve my overarching goal and for improving my interpersonal communication skills. I plan to do this in several different ways. First, in order to develop intellectually, I plan to complete my master's degree in human services. I plan to grow spiritually by remaining connected with other believers, spending time reading scripture, and through further developing my prayer life. To mature emotionally and interpersonally, I plan on working on the relationships in my life. I will implement the techniques and use the tools I've acquired through this course and strive for greater self-awareness. Moving to the next slide, I'll talk about the heart of my plan of action. Above all, I believe that we are to love others. Peterson says, let yourself be the kind of person with enough warmth to spare, so your spirit nurtures the environment around you. He also suggests we stop defending ourselves in interpersonal relationships and creating conflict. He mentions a tug-of-war analogy and suggests dropping one end of the rope to eliminate the struggle. I believe Peterson's thoughts line up with what Paul tells us in the New Testament. Paul says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, Value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. I believe as we place others' interests before our own, we fulfill God's commandment. As we take care of others, God takes care of us, and we are thus able to meet our goals by His grace and with His strength.